This just moments ago, we received this document. This is a redacted version of the whistleblower complaint to the intelligence community that expressed serious concerns about the president and the White House. Let me read you one line. In the course of my official duties, I have received information from multiple U.S. government officials that the president of the United States is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election.
It goes on. I was not a direct witness to most of the events described. However, I found my colleagues' accounts of these events to be credible because in almost all cases, multiple officials recounted fact patterns that were consistent with one another.
This interference includes, among other things, pressuring a foreign country to investigate one of the president's main domestic political rivals. The president's personal lawyer, Mr. Rudolph Giuliani, is a central figure in this effort. Attorney General Barr appears to be involved as well.
About that phone call, very quickly, multiple White House officials with direct knowledge of the call informed me that after an initial exchange of pleasantries, President Trump used the remainder of the call to advance his personal interests. Namely, he sought to pressure the Ukrainian leader to take actions to help the president's 2020 re-election bid.
All right, let's go to Lauren Fox, who's outside the hearing room. We're waiting to hear from the Director of National Intelligence. This is the document we've been waiting for. Lauren, you've had it for a few minutes longer than we have. What jumps out at you?
Well, I think the key points here, Rudy Giuliani is a key person who's involved here. And again, the president was using his office, this whistleblower alleges, basically to solicit foreign interference in the election against his top political rivals. That's going to be serious. And Democrats in here are going to be questioning the top spy this morning about exactly why this complaint did not come to Congress earlier, given the gravity of what is being alleged here. We knew that this was going to be damaging. That's what a lot of Democrats who were coming out after they saw this in a classified setting last night were saying. Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on this committee, warned that what he saw was very disturbing. And other Democrats as well came out and said this is just more proof that Nancy Pelosi made the right decision when she announced earlier this week that they were moving forward with that impeachment inquiry. Of course, now more than half of the Congress supports moving forward with that inquiry, a very significant development, and we're going to be watching for more. I'm also going to be continuing to read through this complaint just before Democrats sit down again with Joseph Maguire, the DNI.
All right, Lauren, thank you very much. Please stand by for us. We want to go through a key part of this document that we're just seeing, Allison. If you want to read this, efforts to restrict access to records related to the call.
In the days following the phone call, I learned from multiple U.S. officials that senior White House officials had intervened to, quote, lock down all records of the phone call, especially the official word-for-word transcript of the call that was produced, as is customary, by the White House Situation Room. This set of actions underscored to me that White House officials understood the gravity of what had transpired in that call.
White House officials told me they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are typically stored for coordination, finalization, and distribution to cabinet-level officials. Instead, the transcript was loaded onto a separate electronic system that is otherwise used to store and handle classified information in an especially sensitive nature. One White House official described this act as an abuse of this electronic system because the call did not contain anything remotely sensitive from a national security perspective.
Well, I mean, let's just stop there. That is a fascinating development that shows how worried people were, that people knew that something was amiss and they were worried, and somehow this whistleblower was told of this and brought it to the attention of the Inspector General. Also, it says, I'll just go on, the White House officials who told me this information were deeply disturbed by what had transpired in the phone call. They had told me there was already a discussion ongoing with White House lawyers about how to treat this call because of the likelihood in the officials' retelling that they had witnessed the president abuse his office for personal gain.
All right, again, the key thing here, White House officials told me they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the transcript from the computer system in which transcripts are typically stored. Governor Kasich, you are here with us right now. The suggestion here, it's not just a suggestion, it's flat out stated by this whistleblower, and And again,
I don't
I
think
will
this
note,
is by the whistleblower. I think this is a report by the
this is the
Inspector
letter
General.
from the whistleblower. The Inspector General then investigated it
Right.
and finds this to be of urgent
That's
concern, which
correct.
adds
And I think
credibility
it
here.
explains why he was of urgent concern.
But what about that notion that White House lawyers ordered?
Well, they knew they had a problem with that call. I mean, there's no question about it. So they get rid of it, see if you can move it off the computer. So somebody early on felt this was inappropriate. And that's, I think, what the whistleblower said, wait a minute, you're not going to move that off so it can't be investigated. I'm going to report this to the Inspector General. And so that's the critical nature, as my read here, because we've just, as you know, we've just been handed this document. But I think what happened is there was somebody in the White House that said, no, we're not going to bury this. This has to get out. People have to understand what transpired. That's my read of this. And, of course, there were people in the White House saying, no, we don't want anybody to see this. And the whistleblower saying, wait a minute, this has to come to the light of day. And it's very serious, extremely serious.
Caitlin, your reaction as you read this, and how do you think the White House?
And what's so interesting is we've heard White House officials downplay this whistleblower, saying it was someone who they believed was biased, didn't like the president. And when you're reading this, it says, quote, over the past 4 months, more than half a dozen U.S. officials have informed me of various facts related to this effort. So this person who made this complaint spoke to multiple people and says later on that essentially what they were hearing from some people, they were hearing from multiple people. So, and they corroborated each other's stories. So essentially, it's multiple people inside the government that were making claims about this.
Here's the thing. When I look at this, how does it make me feel? It's just really depressing because, you know, I know that the news is hyperbole and we've got to get out there and all this, but you know what? Removing a president of the United States, taking him out of the White House, because I remember the day when Nixon got on the helicopter and flew out of there, and I don't want to compare them, but I remember that. We deal with the presidency. It's a very serious matter, and to see this, this is very, very serious.
Does it make that possibility more likely? Does this document make that possibility more likely?
Well, what this document says is that you had White House people who wanted to not let this call become public, who then acted to try to not have it come public, and this statement says, this was urgent concern because the IG sees this and says, no, this has to get out there.
There's a
and
word
it has to
for
be
this.
investigated.
There's a word for this, or a hyphenated word. It's cover-up. The idea here that it's not the conversation, not just the conversation itself, but it's covering up and hiding
trying to
the
remove
fact
the
of
call.
the conversation.
I can't. Look, I'm with you on this, but you've got additional information. Giuliani is going to have to testify. William Barr is going to have to testify. Let us go in sequence carefully and in a position where...
I mean, you've been prescribing being circumspect, and when we talked to you before the commercial break, you said you didn't have enough information. But here's a big chunk of new information.
Well, a lot of this is confirming what we already saw in the transcript. I mean, that's what a lot of this is, and why he thought it was so important. I think it's critically important. That's why the intelligence committees have to go through this. I'm just suggesting to you orderly, in a way where the American people can say, this is a problem. Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
But speaking of Rudy Giuliani, let's get back to this and talk about a big part of it where it says, this person says they heard from multiple U.S. officials that they were deeply concerned by what they viewed as Mr. Giuliani's circumvention of national security decision-making processes to engage with Ukrainian officials and relay messages back and forth between Ukraine and the president. It goes into pretty detailed how all of this got started
very serious.
before this phone call that we're talking about. And it's saying that State Department officials, including ambassadors, had spoken with Giuliani in an attempt to, quote, contain the damage to U.S. national security. It's talking about how they met with members of the administration to discuss policy matters, and they were receiving from U.S. officials on one hand and from Mr. Giuliani on the other. This is going to be a big deal, talking about how the president's personal attorney was intervening in relations between the United States and Ukraine.
That is just unbelievable to me, that they've got this. He's not even working in the government. He's an attorney. He's running. He's trying to negotiate stuff. This is again, this rises again to another level of, well, look, at the end, we see what the facts are.
You stop yourself every time.
You know why? Because it's hard to characterize it in a way. I want to be careful about that. We're dealing with the President of the United States. I have never been a fan of his. I've never supported him. I just want the process to play out. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts is all I want. And the jury in my mind, John, the jury is out in my mind as to whether this is going to lead to his removal. I don't want to go there. I want this to be completed and let everybody look at the facts and then decide yes, no, right?